The Gainesville Times is on TikTok.
That's right, we're on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook. Find us at Gainesville Times or G Times News to get the latest about what's going on in Hall County. Reach our listeners with your brand right here on Taken Too Soon. If you're interested in being a part of the show as a sponsor, email our team at marketing@gainesvilletimes.com to get more information.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on the Taken Too Soon podcast are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views, opinions, or positions of the hosts or contributors. This podcast deals with mature topics that may not be suitable for all listeners. Material heard on the Taken Too Soon podcast is intended for adult listeners. Listener discretion is advised.
Elaine just didn't show up.
Searching through the woods, searching by the lake, and coming across a bag or something and just praying and hoping that it's not her.
He said they found her, but unfortunately she was dead.
You know, it bothers you. I mean, I'm human. These police officers are human. But it bothers me.
What can you remember from 25 years ago? Are the memories in vivid watercolors as they once were, or are the details fuzzy and moth-eaten at the edges after years in the back of your mind?
September 20th, 1999. Elaine Nix gets a vulgar page from her boyfriend Billy Millwood and goes off to Zach's food rack to use the payphone. When she didn't come back, Elaine's mother Becky started calling friends. A missing persons report was filed September 21st. September 22nd, the Atlanta Falcons agreed to move their corporate offices and training facility to Flowery Branch.
September 24th, the search for Elaine is the lead story on the front page, and again the next day. We said I love you 10 or 15 times before getting off the phone, Billy Millwood said in an interview with the Times published on September 25th. They had plans to go to the football game and to go camping, Billy said.
September 26th, the Atlanta Braves clinched the NL East Division on their way to a World Series appearance, their last for more than 2 decades. September 29th, Elaine's body is found around 8 a.m. behind industrial cutting dye and identified through dental records.
We went back to the Nix home to talk to Elaine's mom, Becky, about her experience finding out that Elaine was missing and the events that followed.
Tell me about the day before Elaine went missing.
Sunday morning they went to church. Yeah, and I was working because I worked third shift, and I had to sleep. So they went, and she said that she had rededicated her life. She was so excited what the preacher was preaching about, and she was telling me all about it. I believe it was that you could get forgiven for your sins no matter what it was.
What do you remember from September 20th, 1999?
She had been sick that day. She didn't get up till after 1 or 2 o'clock. Her ear was hurting that day, and so I had cooked supper, and she had ate, and then she got the page, and she said that he had paged her and put in a bad word, and she was going to go to the payphone because she could go and talk as long as she wanted to for a quarter back then. So we hadn't lived at that house but 4 months, and she would do that periodically, going to that payphone and talk, because we had a phone, but it was long distance from our phone. So she would just always do that. Elaine just didn't show up. She didn't come home. So I started calling friends and see if they had saw her. And no one had saw her. And then when I went by the store and saw her car, I went inside to see if they knew where the girl was that was driving it, and no one had saw her. So
And that was at Sept?
yes. And so I got in the car and I cranked it up because the keys was in it. And, I was thinking to myself, well, something's wrong with this picture. It's got gas, it cranked. So I know that she wasn't gone because the car wasn't working. So I drove it home, and as I was driving down the road, I looked over to the the passenger seat, and her cigarettes was in the seat. I was a smoker too, and you don't leave your cigarettes behind, you know. And by the time I got to the house, it was like 2.5 miles to the house. My husband said when I got out of the car, I was as white as a ghost because I knew, you know, something wasn't right.
So you moved the car from Zach's to the house. Did anyone drive it or mess with it?
Nobody drove it, but my husband had a lot of nervous energy, and there was some cover in the trunk from where her and Billy had went camping. Was it Labor Day in September? Those comforters were still in the trunk, so he brought them in the house for me to wash them. You know, it's just, you look back and you regret things that you did, but that's about the only thing.
When did you get Elaine's car?
The day she was missing, I got the car. It was in the evening. But by the time I got home and we were calling people and stuff, but I had called Hall County for the missing persons report. And the same policeman that saw the car was the one that came to the house and took the report. And it was about 9 o'clock at night, I think it was.
How do you feel like Hall County handled the missing persons investigation?
Well, when it first happened, we went to the jail and talked to Bob Vass. He was the sheriff back then. And he was telling us that she could have been a runaway, that somebody picked her up from the payphone, and he just made out like she could have been stripping at a job somewhere or something. And we felt that wasn't a good thing to say to parents, you know.
What was the search effort like in those 9 days?
They never came and got the car or anything. They communicated with us, but we were just out searching, doing searches, putting up flyers, and just trying to get everybody aware that she didn't come home, that she was missing. She got missing on a Monday night, and we did our own that weekend at Zach's that next Saturday, and a lot of people showed up, and we just searched the woods, and I mean, we knew she was somewhere, you know. I mean, she's had, you know, she left home a couple of times and stayed with family and friends because she didn't like our rules, but we never thought it would come to finding her deceased.
What do you remember from the day that she was found?
I remember him coming to the house. Carl Dietrich, he said they found her, but unfortunately she was dead. And I don't know, that just hit you, you know. But that just seemed like a cold thing to say to me. I don't know.
Do you remember when it sunk in?
No, because she was in shock for a long time. I mean, not even get to see her, you know, to identify her. We've never had closure.
Did it come as a surprise to you that she was found in Gwinnett County?
Yeah, we didn't know. We never heard of that. I mean, we used to go to the auction some down there in that area, but, we really didn't know the area. But it was kind of a big issue of who had the case. Was it Gainesville or Gwinnett? So they finally, Gwinnett got the case. So
When did you get her jewelry back?
they gave it back. I think it was pretty soon. But they said there was no DNA on it, but I've kept it in the safe untouched, just in case someday some kind of technology might come out.
What kind of bag was it in?
Their evidence bag, it's a little clear plastic baggie.
You mentioned there was this kind of fight over who was going to get to investigate it between Hall and Gwinnett County. Since it's been in Gwinnett County's hands, how much contact do you have with them?
We always have to call them. And then a lot of times we wouldn't get any answers from them. So we just finally, just quit calling, because they would always tell us that nothing new on the case, that it's a cold case now. So pretty much, I just think it's in a filing cabinet somewhere. It's frustrating.
Has the cold case supervisor reached out to you at all?
He was supposed to come and go to a luncheon with us, but he never did. Never called or nothing. I just try to give him the benefit of a doubt that I know everything. Every day there's different murders and stuff. I feel like they got a full plate, but they could at least help us, more than what they did.
Which is harder, not having closure or not having justice?
Well, not having movement, because there's no justice on this earth. I mean, if they got the person, that still wouldn't be justice enough.
From what I've gathered, I feel like your family is very faith-oriented. So has this whole ordeal shaken your faith?
It didn't shake it. I mean, it made me stronger in a way for the prayers of people praying for us. That's what got us through the years.
Could you tell us a little bit more about the annual memorial for Elaine?
We just always do it on the day that she was found, and family and friends come, and we write on the balloons and release them. It lets the public know that we're not gave up.
And will you ever give up?
No. We're going to get new shirts, and we're going to do the lantern balloons. We're going to do those this year. And just, remind everybody that it's still unsolved.
What would you say to someone who might know something that happened to your daughter to encourage them to come forward?
That I would appreciate it if they knew anything. I don't know the reason why they would withheld it, but I'm glad they did at this time.
What would you say to the person responsible for this?
Just why did you do it? And how? I mean, they always told us that, she wasn't shot, she wasn't stabbed. There's no obvious reason for her death, but that was the reasons they give us that they couldn't release any reports because it was an ongoing investigation. And, that person just took a lot away from the family.
What memories do you feel like would have been special for you had none of this tragedy happened?
She would probably have a few more children. I'd have more grandchildren. And if she stayed with her previous boyfriend, she'd probably be back at home. And I'd be raising all of them.
Can't get enough of Taken Too Soon? Check out bonus content exclusive to Times subscribers at GainesvilleTimes.com/TakenTooSoon. See photos, read old articles, review documents, and watch videos from our interviews. Subscribe today to dive deeper into this cold case mystery. Find the bonus content link in the show notes. And now back to the show.
While Jennifer Boyd was in our studio, we also asked her about her experience with Elaine's case.
Can you kind of describe to us, because, something like this is kind of out of the blue, so do you remember the night that you had heard that she had gone missing?
It was actually the next morning.
The next morning?
Yes, that's when her mother called all the friends and was asking if she was with us and if we talked to her. And so that's when we knew something was wrong.
And at that point, did you start calling people?
Oh, yeah, we were all of us friends were calling each other, like, who can we call? Like, who could she be with? Like,
and then fast forward to 9. So it was 9 days in between the last time she was seen and when her body was found. During that 9 days, can you kind of describe, did it get progressively worse in the feeling? Like,
Yes.
Was there initial hope at the beginning?
Yeah, there was initial hope at the beginning, but the more we searched for, like I can remember searching by the railroad tracks, searching through the woods, searching by the lake, and coming across a bag or something and just praying and hoping that it's not her in that bag. Or it was, the further it got to that 9th day, it wasn't looking good to us. Like nobody had seen or heard from her. And
So on the searches, you say that there was kind of that, you want to find something, but
you don't. Yeah.
want to find something.
Yeah.
Was that difficult?
Yes, very difficult. Yes.
So during that time, during that 9-day stint, who did you kind of lean on for moral support or just emotional support during that 9 days?
Or my group of friends. And of course, at that time, my mother had already passed away in 98. So I leaned on my dad a lot too. So.
And speaking of your dad giving you advice, like, can you think of like one particular piece of advice that he kind of gave you to kind of, I don't know, make you feel better during that time period? That
he just tried to tell me to stay positive and don't look at the negative, just keep hope. So.
How big was the search effort in those 9 days?
It was pretty big. A lot of the community came out and helped, and a lot of people from school, and it was a pretty big search.
Any estimate of how many people you think?
Oh, off and on, because people would come and go, I would say at least maybe 100 or more. Like,
How wide did it go in the city and the county?
we definitely went around Zach's Food Rack, all the railroad tracks over there, any water around there. It kind of spread pretty far, like toward, we didn't really go toward Gwinnett County that way, but we stayed pretty much in Hall County. But the search was around any water areas, like went around Lake Lanier, because we didn't know if maybe she was dumped at some other part of the lake or things like that. And
so then to the 29th, when she's found, how did you find out about that?
I found out from her mother. And then I went to the school to let the friends know, because I had already graduated. And I actually ended up having to go to the counselor's office, and then the counselor called all the friends in. And then, of course, parents checked them out of school, and we were all together and went straight to Elaine's house.
And what's the emotion in that room?
Oh, it was horrible. It was just devastating, heartbreaking, and it wasn't the outcome that we wanted.
And so over the years, you've kind of become the spokesperson for the Nix family.
Yes.
How did that kind of come about?
It just kind of happened. Like, I just stepped forward, and I can't give up. I know she wouldn't give up on me.
And
her parents are very quiet and reserved. So
that was what I was going to say. Is like Becky seems very reserved.
Yeah.
So I feel like you kind of stepped in to be her voice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
In a sense. Let me ask you this, and all the time since then, what have been your takeaways from the investigation, whether it be the missing persons investigation that Hall County did or the murder investigation that Gwinnett County has done? Do you think that law enforcement has done a good job over the years?
I do not.
And why would you say that?
I think they lost a lot of evidence when they released the car to her mother and let her drive it home. So there could have been a lot of potential evidence in that car. I do know Becky can't remember whether she had to slide the seat up or not, because her and Elaine were the same height, so she wouldn't have had to move the seat. So I just think that they took her as a runaway, and when her body was found, the car had already been released. Like, there could have been so much potential evidence in that car, I think.
How do you think the way that law enforcement looked at the case as a potential runaway affected the investigation when it ends up being a homicide or a suspected homicide?
Yeah. Like I said, it's just so much potential evidence could have been gone, like even from the payphone. Like, there could have been fingerprints on the payphone, or I think they could have just done a better due diligence on looking at everything instead of just taking her as, oh, well, she's just run off somewhere.
And over the years, being the spokesperson for the family, I mean, that means you see the family a good bit.
Yes.
How have you seen them? Has it gotten progressively better, progressively worse, or kind of the same in how they handle this situation? Like,
Well, right now her father's not in the greatest health, so we don't know if he'll be able to make it to the vigil this year. But there have been times when they've kind of been like, we don't want to really do this. And my answer is, you don't have to. I will be there September 29th, 7 p.m. every year until I find out. And then once I find out, I will be there to celebrate her life and that we know what happened and we have justice for her.
how frustrating has it been that in 25 years you've gotten little to no contact with Gwinnett County who's handled the murder investigation since the start?
Extremely frustrating. Like, all we need, just a phone call. Let us know where you're at in it. If you're not anywhere, just let us know. Like, just a simple phone call, especially to her parents.
And if I'm not mistaken, the only reason that the family has the autopsy report today is because of another podcast. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
So that wasn't even something that Gwinnett County had offered to give the family beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
You had said earlier that Gwinnett County wasn't a place that she frequented and it wasn't a place that she would really go. So how big a surprise was it that that's where her body was found?
It was a huge surprise because it was right over the Hall County line.
Yeah,
like, right over the Gwinnett County line. Like,
yeah, Faith did the research on the maps, and it was exactly one road over into Gwinnett County.
So then that puts two counties working on the case, and Gwinnett County has a higher crime rate than Hall County, so they have a bigger caseload. So somebody knew what they were doing.
Did you ever get a sense of why Hall County let Gwinnett take over on the homicide?
I think it had to, because that's where her body was found. So Hall County handled the missing person, and then Gwinnett County, the homicide.
Just for context, how do you think that Hall County handled the missing persons investigation to start? I know, like, they started out with the standard, oh, she's a runaway, just give it time and she'll come back. But do you feel that they gave more effort on the missing persons case than, say, Gwinnett? You feel Gwinnett has given on the murder case? Yeah,
I would agree with that. I mean, like I said, we've got a 97-page document that Hall County provided to us.
And that wasn't a tough thing for you to obtain, was it?
No. Mm-mm.
But everything with Gwinnett County seems to be.
Yeah, they don't seem to want to turn over anything.
And again, in the missing persons case, they had said that she had been in Laurelwood for a couple months back.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that also played into why they might not have put their full effort in? Because
I think it may have played a part.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They're kind of just writing her off as, oh, well, she's got problems, quote unquote.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I believe so. I believe they looked at all that, and she had left her parents' house a few times. She lived in my grandmother's basement for a while with my aunt and my cousin. So there was that. So she did have a history of leaving home.
What is your hope with it being the 25th anniversary and there being more attention on it? What do you hope will come out of this?
I hope someone that knows something will speak up, because you can't go 25 years and keep a secret. Like, so whoever did this has told somebody. So somebody knows something. And I'm hoping that the more attention that's brought to her case, that someone will be compelled to come forward and speak. And not just to us. I always tell everybody that contacts me, please contact Hall County and Gwinnett County.
With it being 25 years, do you have any inkling of whether her killer might even be alive still?
That I don't know. Like, I'm hoping so that they can serve justice.
Hey, true crime junkies of North Georgia, are you aware of what's going on around you? Find out by signing up for our free newsletters from the Times. You'll get local news in your inbox daily, including at least one free article a day about what's happening in Hall County.
Former investigator Marty Nix, no relation to the Nix family, at first glance doesn't look like a former law enforcement officer. His grayish, white long hair pulled into a ponytail makes him look more like an aged musician than a former investigator. But despite his appearance, when Marty Nix sat down to talk to us about the Elaine Nix missing persons case, handled by Hall County, and his involvement in the case, it was easy to recognize that he was not just a former law enforcement officer, but was the type who was committed to giving his all on every case he worked during his career. The Elaine Nix case was no exception.
So yeah, tell us how you got involved in this case.
Okay. Back in the September 99, I believe it was, 1999, I was with the sheriff's office. I was a lieutenant over the Crimes Against Persons unit. And that unit had, 7, 8 different investigators. And we did all the, homicides, missing persons, violent crimes, crimes against persons. So I had a group of investigators that worked with me in various cases. In that particular day, it was somewhere in the afternoon of the 22nd, I believe. The sheriff at that time was Bob Vass. And Bob Vass called me and said, "Hey, can you come up to my office? There's a case up here I want you to look at." And I said, "Certainly." I went to his office, and there was the boyfriend of Elaine Nix. Let me think. Billy Millwood, I believe is the name. And Billy's mother, I believe, was there. And he began to proceed, went into Sheriff Vass's office and began to proceed to tell me about, he was on the telephone with his girlfriend, and he was worried about her safety as he hadn't heard from her, and since he had been talking to her on the telephone. And he gave a brief description that he was talking to her. I believe he lived in White County, and back in those days, cell phones were not the norm. As a matter of fact, they're very rare. And, people use payphones, which I know aren't very few exist today, but that was a means of communication back in the day. So, when he was explaining the case, like, okay, she was using a payphone. Everybody used a payphone back then. So that wasn't that unusual. So as he was describing the phone call and the times and everything, and it sort of explained the situation, certain flags begin to, kind of, yeah, this, we need to be looking for this little girl. And we did. There was at that time there was 2 investigators, Gerald Lanick and Carl Dietrich, both extremely intelligent, good investigators. They were working with me, and they were in the office. So I'm like, well, we got to go. So we get into the car, and we go to Zach's food rack where she was, purported to have been. And it just so happens that one of the investigators, Carl Dietrich, he was a retired, I think, Dade County police officer, and he worked with us as model police officer, just a super police officer. But he lived directly behind Zach's food rack, and he worked as a security at Zach's food rack. But during, I think until, I'm almost positive, 10:30 is when his shift ended, and they would close, and and he would just directly behind Zach's food racks where he lived, and so he was really familiar with the operations of that business, the comings and goings, and so he was a good person to put on that case from the get-go. And so Carl Dietrich, myself, Gerald Lanick, we responded. And I was not that familiar at the time. It was best of my memory. It's a large parking lot. I believe it was gravel. I'm not certain on that. But it was a park. And I remember asking, what's the deal with this? And it's like, well, this is a place where trucks can park. This is an isolated part of the county. And that's basically, they used it as I don't want to say a mini truck stop, but, there were on occasions vehicles and trucks parked there next to, the payphones that were there outside the business. And so it wasn't that unusual for trucks to be parked there. And so I believe Carl was in charge of putting in the videotapes of at that time they used the I believe it was VHS tapes, and he would put it in there, and it would record, the cameras and the businesses and everything. So we had everything from the get-go. We had the security, what little there was, and security cameras back then wasn't as elaborate, near as elaborate as it is today. So we had that, and basically that's how the investigation got started. And it was, I think we were able to hop on it really quick. And it was my recollection when myself and Gerald and Carl was like, we got something's going on here. It's something about missing persons. And when veteran law enforcement agents, you can pretty much tell sometimes, like, this is not right. Something is not right. And back in those days, we did everything like, there was no cell phone. So obviously we could not rely on that. But, credit cards, banking information, because during the course of interviews and interviewing, friends and family, Elaine probably did not, there's no evidence that she had a lot of money. She was not, in a economic status to just, be loaded in money. So we knew she didn't have any money. So that was another red flag. It's like, okay, people just don't disappear. Right. So we were concerned. We were concerned from the get-go, or at least I was. And I was, as time rolled on, we got more and more concerned. And to answer your question, that's how I got involved in it from the get-go. And so we had investigators on that the day that the crime was reported.
Do you remember the call when her body was found?
Yes.
What? Tell us about it.
At that particular time, I couldn't tell you the exact date. I mean, it's in record, but it was a little over a week after that. We received a call from Gwinnett County that a body had been located, and so of course, naturally, we responded. And at that time, we worked very close with Gwinnett County, and there's an investigator, John Laddie, who's I knew very well, and John, I remember having a lot of conversations with him, and I'm like, let's get you filled in. So at that point, we went down, and the body was identified, and I know we had some dental records. We exchanged we gave them everything we had. And since the body was found in Gwinnett County, they would take on the role of a homicide or death investigation at that point. And so John Laddie and I, we conversed quite a bit. And shortly thereafter, it was, hey, we need to be hitting the streets. So we start canvas interviewing, roadblocks, talking to everybody. And there were a lot of people interviewed. And that's how Gwinnett County, we work very close with Gwinnett County. And I know that they double tracked us, as far as, in which you should, re-interviewing witnesses that we did. And that's fine, and we encourage that. But that's how Gwinnett County became involved.
When her body was found, were there certain things that stood out that raised eyebrows for investigators?
Yes. Obviously, it was strange. It was a strange, situation when you have a young female found. I did not view the body. However, it's my understanding that it was, she was not clothed. And it was in the summer, in September in Georgia, it gets very hot, and, bodies decompose very rapidly. And sometimes in weather like that, and I've worked many cases that decomposed bodies, it's very difficult to determine a cause of death, because simply and I'll give you an example, and I'm not saying this in this case, but for instance, if a decomposed body, sometimes when a body decomposes, there may be obvious signs of cause of death if the body or relatively fresh. However, as the deceased, there's certain things like medical examiners and homicide investigators look for. And I'll give you in a case of a strangulation, a lot of times when a person is strangulated, basically it causes what's called petechia hemorrhaging, I believe is the name of the word. It's when blood vessels and your arteries, it's basically in your eyes, the blood vessels in one's eyes will rupture because of the pressure put on, and the pressure in the blood going through and in certain cases when bodies are decomposed, you cannot determine that because, the petechia hemorrhaging is gone. And so while there may not have been stab wounds, like ballistics from a gunshot wounds, things of that nature, where there are obvious causes of death, in certain cases, you may not determine that. However, that does not mean that it was that it did not exist.
Going back to Zach's food rack, You guys did do several searches out there. I believe one of them was with canines.
Yeah.
Could you walk us through kind of how the searches went?
Right. Well, the way we typically, when you're searching a crime scene, typically the way those searches would go is, I like to use the grid search method. It's like, hey, okay, here's my grid, here's your grid, go down, and let's go anything of any interest. It's like, let's look at it. And there was a lot of, in that particular area, as best I recall, there's your typical debris, but we found nothing of any value. No bloody knives, no, weapons, nothing of that really stood out. But I remember we out of calling canine units in, whether or not that probably was not going to find anything, but nothing ventured, nothing gained. So we pulled out and searched as, anything. And I remember in previous cases, you look for duct tape, you look for a rope, you look for anything that's just out of the ordinary. And unfortunately, we did not recover anything remarkable of it evidentiary wise. It just didn't exist around that area.
That being said, right behind Zach's food rack, there is a mobile home park. I've been out there. There's a pretty clear path from behind there to the mobile home park. Did you look at individuals in that mobile home park that may have been involved in some way through crime of opportunity, say?
Right. And yes. And I will make another reference. One of the investigators, Carl Dietrich, lived in that mobile home park and was very familiar with, his neighbors' comings and goings. And out of all of the canvases of the neighborhoods, and I'll just say this, nothing of any remarkable evidentiary value came out of that. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
At this point, how long had you been in law enforcement?
I began at that point. Let's see. I started in law enforcement in 1984. I graduated from North Georgia College, and went to Columbus State University, got a master's degree in public administration, went to Georgia Command College, went to, I got a lot of training in forensics and, homicide investigations and things of that nature. So I had a lot of education and training under my belt. And I feel pretty confident that I used every tool that I knew of, from victim, we wanted to know everything about the victim, victimology. We wanted to know, we documented as much as we could, but that's where I came from. I worked in that role under Sheriff Bob Bass and Sheriff Meekum. That was what I did. And I was sort of I was sort of like coordinating investigations and investigators, and that was the role of my job back in the day.
Walk us through the review of the surveillance footage at the time, because you mentioned that there was shortcomings in that area.
Well, and when I say shortcomings, let me just clarify that a bit. Today, I know everything's digital, and all the security and the cameras and things of that nature is all on a digital platform. Back in the day, the convenience stores would just throw in a VHS tape to a little recorder, turn it on, hope it worked. There was no time stamp. There was no, and that was their security, right? And Carl Dietrich was actually the one that placed the security tape in the machine the night that Elaine went missing. So we were pretty confident in the chain of custody. And so we had a good tape that, I remember assigning that strictly, and I can't remember which investigator was in charge of taking that tape, documenting it, and trying to, based on other statement, okay, this car passed at this time. This vehicle passed at this time. Actually, a patrol deputy passed at this time, and would go back and put the pieces together. So that's how the investigation sort of revealed, well, yeah, we can corroborate, a lot of the comings and goings based on some of the information on the videotape.
Do you have any guess on how many people worked that case back in the day? Yes,
I had in my little division, I had 7 or 8 investigators, and we were all on it. And they were good investigators. They were jam up investigators. And then with the patrol, we had, distributing flyers. We put out information. Let's look for, these people. Let's look for these vehicles. We need, and we put that information out and followed them up to the best of, our ability.
And we talked about this a little bit earlier, but you said that this case has really bothered you, even to this day.
Yeah, it has. And, it's like, that little girl, she was just like a regular person.
How often do you think about this case? How often does it come up in your mind?
It was doing pretty good, but it bothers you. I mean, I'm human. These police officers are human, but it bothers me.
If there's what would you want people to know in the community if there's anybody that might have the tip, the key, the piece of information?
Get in touch with me. Or better yet, Gerald Couch. He's the guy that was with us down there. Call, somebody knows something. Somebody knows something. There's no doubt in my mind. And I think, with her, it was just a little girl. And somebody, in my opinion, murdered that girl. And they need to be held accountable.
Was there a moment that it really sunk in deep for you of the emotions that you feel for this case? I mean, it's still emotional and raw for you now.
Yes, it is.
Was there a moment in that initial investigation that it really sunk in for you?
When I got the call from Gwinnett County, I'm like, oh my God. I was always hoping, okay, maybe she just ran off with a new boyfriend or something. I was hoping that was the case. And, sometimes in those cases, that's what happens, but when they found the body, it's like, no, this is bad. It's something that just tells you that, and when we first went down there, it's like something tells you something ain't right here.
Tune in next week as we take a look at the scene 25 years later and delve into the autopsy with Dr. John Hager.
Do you have any information you'd like us to look at regarding Elaine's case?
If so, please email tips to Greg Finan at Gainesville Times. That's GregFinan at GainesvilleTimes.com.
Check out bonus content exclusive to Times subscribers at GainesvilleTimes.com/taken-too-soon. See photos, read old articles, review documents, and watch videos from our interviews. Subscribe today to dive deeper into this cold case mystery. Find the bonus content link in the show notes.
The music in this podcast was by Ben Ingram. If you like the Taken Too Soon podcast, be sure to give us a rating wherever you listen.
Thanks for listening. This has been Taken Too Soon, the Elaine Nix story.